All right, so we start off with a 5-pound pork roast that's been cut up into 1-inch pieces, cubes, and then a lot of the extra fat has been cut off, but there is still some on here. Kind of helps to make the meat juicy. The extra fat we actually would fry up separately to make chicharrones. So the fried fat, you can make tacos out of it. You can eat it by itself. People even make them in tamales, but we start off with this, and we're going to put it in a pot and then cover it with just enough water so that way it's level with the meat. So that should be good. This was about 4 cups of water for a 5-pound roast. We put this on high heat for now to kind of get it boiling. And then we're going to add spices. So we're going to do about a tablespoon of salt, ground garlic, and comino or cumin. So you can start off with that. This is the garlic. And cumin. And then just mix that in with the meat. And then you let the meat start to boil. The next thing you want to do is you want to get some chili powder. We use the Gebhardt's chili powder. You start off with a cup of chili powder to start with, and then as it cooks and you taste it and whatnot, you might need to add more. Added a half a cup extra at a time if you need more than that. So we'll start off with the cup first. And then just stir it into the meat. And this is what helps make the mole for the meat. So it should have a really, really deep red color. While this meat's boiling or starting to boil, you're going to get 2 tomatillos. They're like the Mexican, like green tomato. Kind of like a chili too. It's but you don't use actual green tomatoes. They have to be tomatillo. You peel off the leaves and then chop it up into pieces. You have the chop it into like cubes like this. Put it in a blender with a little bit of water, and we're going to add that to the pot. All right, so we have the blended tomatillo in here, and then we're just going to mix this into the pot. Helps with the flavor, basically, is what this does. And get all the seeds and everything in there. And then just mix that in, and then you're going to cook the meat until it starts to get tender, but not too tender. Like it's just as it starts to soften up, then you're gonna stop there and we'll do the next step. All right, next step we have the masa. We purchased this at a Mexican grocery store. It's the prepared tamale masa. So we should already have like oils and stuff in there. This makes it a little bit easier to prepare, so we don't have to put as much stuff in it when we're making it. This is a 7-pound bag. A 7-pound bag will make approximately 4 dozen tamales. So we normally, when we make our tamales, we make about 12, 13 dozen at a time. So we have 3 bags of masa here. You're also going to need baking powder, salt, and manteca or lard. So this is the one we use. You don't need such a big container. You'll probably just need a little cup size of it. Because it's prepared, you won't need to use as much. So I'm going to empty these bags, a couple of the bags, into a big, you need to have a really, really big bowl to be able to mix the masa. All right, now that I have the masa in the bowl, I'm going to take my salt. You want to taste the masa. It's okay to eat because it's just corn flour, ground up corn and flour, so you're not going to get sick by tasting it. But just take a little pinch of it, taste it, see if it has a good salt consistency to it. So if it feels like it, or it tastes like it has enough salt, you're good. Usually you have to add some to it. So we start by, all right, so you start off by putting some in the palm of your hand, you know, just probably like a tablespoon or so first. Just kind of sprinkle it around, and then you're going to start mixing with your hands. So of course, make sure your hands are clean, and then take off any of your rings if you don't want them to get messed up, and you just start smushing it around. And the thing with masa when you're mixing it is it has to get to a good consistency. It's going to be cold, so your hands are going to get cold. It's kind of one of the things you kind of have to deal with. But see how it's sticking to the hands right now? We don't want it to do that. So we have to kind of work the masa, get it warmed up, kind of, you know, make sure it's got everything in there. So I'm going to start off by mixing the salt in first. And then as we do that, you know, kind of taste it a little bit more. If it still needs more salt, add some more to it. You kind of want to, the masa needs to be a little bit more on the saltier side, because when you're cooking it, it's going to get released, you know, into the mix when you're doing it. So you kind of want to have it a little bit saltier, and then you can always add, you know, more to it a little bit at a time so you don't overdo it. And then you can add your cornstarch, not cornstarch, baking powder, and then the manteca while you're mixing it. So I'm going to add a little bit more salt and the other ingredients. And usually when we mix, you kind of scoop underneath, press it back down again, kind of go towards the center towards you. Now we do have a kind of like almost like a superstition when it comes to making tamales. Only one person should be making the masa and, you know, spicing it and things like that. It's almost like too many cooks spoil the pot. Kind of the same type of idea with this. So once we get into the process, I'll kind of explain that a little bit more too. But I'm going to go ahead and add, Mom, can you come here and help me for me a second? Kind of need an extra pair of hands to be your assistant. But we're going to take some baking powder, and then she's going to sprinkle that in. And what does the baking powder help with?
Make it fluffy.
Okay. And then do I need a spoon for the manteca, or do you want me to just grab it? Okay. So again, just work on mixing that in. I wonder if you kind of show her on the video here, the big size, the big spoon of the manteca. Again, this is going to be cold, so you kind of have to mix it in and warm it up with your hands. This is going to get the masa to a good consistency so it won't stick to your hands anymore. And that way when you're spreading the masa on the corn husks, they'll roll off really easily and come off the husk really easily. So we just kind of keep working with this masa until it gets to a good consistency. Put another big scoop of that. And then just keep working it in. All right, the other thing we can do as well as adding the manteca is adding some oil to help the consistency of the masa. And we just have, what's it, corn oil?
Mm-hmm.
So just
canola.
Canola oil. All right, so we have some canola oil and then like a 1/4 cup. Start off with like a 1/4 cup.
Do we want to measure it?
I'm pretty sure that's kind of what I remember it takes starting off with. You kind of want to start slow and kind of build it up until you start getting to the texture that you want.
Okay.
And then you just work it into the masa. Takes you back to your good old Play-Doh days. Let's go ahead and put some more. I think that's gonna do it. And then as you're working the masa, you know, like I said, you're kind of warming it up, kind of getting it to a good consistency. You just keep, once your masa's to a good consistency, we're gonna get ready the corn husks. They're called hojas. This is an example of the kind that we get. They're dried. So what you have to do is fill your sink up with hot water, and then you're gonna open up your bag of hoja, and you're going to peel them off individually and put them in the sink with hot water to soak so they get soft. And then you'll be able to use them when you spread the masa onto the corn husks. So I'm just going to show you what the husks look like, if I can get this open. So there's a whole lot in here. It's about 15 ounces, but each one is kind of like tissue paper. So you would just go in, separate each singular one and put it down in the hot water, kind of push them down so they're submerged and they get nice and soft. You may have some in here that have, you know, like extra wrinkles and stuff. That's fine. Sometimes they might have some with a little bit of, oh, it's kind of like moldy spots almost because of the moisture from the corn when it was on the husk or on the cob. So you can just toss those, but this is what we use to get that started. Once you soak the corn husks for probably about like 5 or so minutes, when they start getting soft, that's when you can start gathering them up out of the water, and you're going to put them in a bowl. The way that I do it is your corn husks are going to be floating in the water, so I just try and gather them, all the tops being at the tops, and kind of just gather them in my hand like this. And then once you get a good handful, you turn the bottom edge out, and then you whack it like against the sink to get all the extra water out. We want to try and dry them off as much as we can. And then we put them in this type of bowl, or you can use like a measuring pitcher or something like that to stand them up so the extra water then comes down to the bottom, because we want to kind of dry them off. We're then, and you can even have little pieces too, because we'll use these when it comes to filling the tamales to kind of patch in. We cover our table with some clean hand towels, and we use these to dry off the corn husks before we start spreading the masa. So we'll show you that. Cooking, something else that we have to do is we're gonna add some of the masa to the actual pot of meat. So you can just take like, you know, 1/4 cup, 1/2 cup, and then you're gonna put it in a bowl with a little bit of water. And then once you get the masa in there, you can just use your hand to kind of break the masa up and kind of make it like into, you know, a gravy kind of consistency. And this is to help thicken up the mole that we have on the stove right now. So you just kind of mix it up till it gets all creamy. And then we go put this in the pot and mix it in with the meat. All right, so we've got the meat boiling on here. So as you can see, it makes a lot of juice or broth to it. So that's why we're gonna be adding, oh, we're gonna be, you can hear you whispering. I could talk normal, Mom. Mix it in, and this is gonna help to thicken. Got a few lumps in there. Kind of like adding flour to your gravy. Same kind of idea. We'll probably need to do a little bit more. We want it to be a kind of a thicker gravy consistency. Okay, so I have to reiterate, my video cut out apparently when I was trying to do the last step. Once you get it to a good thick consistency like this, the last ingredient that we want to add to the mole is a big heaping tablespoon of creamy peanut butter. So we just use creamy peanut butter, and that is to add some flavor to it. Also helps the texture. And then you want to go back through and taste, see if it needs more salt. I added more salt, more garlic, more comino, till it gets to a really good flavor that you like. And then once that's done, we're gonna take a measuring cup and we're gonna fill it with some of the juice from the mole, because we're gonna put this in our masa to help add flavor to the masa and add color to it. Let me do one more. Okay, and we're gonna do that next. We went ahead and added the mole that we pulled from the pot, poured it into the masa, and then we're gonna mix. So as you can see, we added the mole into the masa. It's gonna add a really good color to it instead of it being really pale and anemic looking. And it'll also add a good flavor to the masa. So we use a spoon for this because the mole is hot. Obviously you don't want to use your hand. So we just stir in this until it's all incorporated. We are now ready to start spreading the masa. So we have big, really big, like a soup spoon that we use because it helps to be able to spread the masa. You grab one of your corn husks from your bowl. They're going to be wet because of when we soaked them. So what you want to do is you want to use your towel that you have, your little hand towel, and kind of just wipe it off. Get as much of the dryness off. Sometimes I kind of shake them. You want to try and dry them off as much as you can. As you are drying it, you're going to notice when you rub the towel, there's going to be a rough side and a smooth side. This takes a little while to kind of get used to noticing, but if we want to make sure we're spreading the masa on the smooth side, or else it's going to get stuck and it's not going to come off. So if you're ever not sure, rub your towel on it. Okay, if it does not get caught, that's the smooth side. That's the side we want to rub the masa on. If we do it on the other side, it's going to catch. It's not smooth. You're going to hear the little pricklies from the corn husk. So that side we're not going to put the masa on. Okay, so we're going to use the smooth side. This takes practice because we started when we were young. We got trained on how to do this. So first attempt's probably going to be a whole lot of fails, but you want to keep trying. You want to take a good scoop of the masa from the bowl, put it on the back of your spoon. Okay, you're going to put that in the middle of your hoja. And the best thing is to hold it in the palm of your hand. You're going to cradle that scoop in your hand. You're going to get the back of your spoon and you're going to slowly spread it out towards the bottom and the edges. And you're going to be kind of adjusting the hoja as it's in your palm as you go to these different spots. And you're going to grab some more and you're going to spread it and just keep spreading. You want to try and do it as evenly as you can.
Only 3/4.
So that way, yes, so that way, we don't like ours with a lot of masa. Our tamales, we don't like them that way. There's some families who like a really thick masa on the outside. We don't prefer that. So we do it a really nice layer so it's thick enough where you can't see through the hoja. And you want to make sure that you're only putting it up to about the first, leave the first third of the hoja empty, because that's where we're going to be folding it. So you'd be wasting masa if you did it all the way to the top. So if you get some on the palm of your hand, you're just going to scoop it off with the spoon and put it back on your masa. So recycle and reuse what you don't get on there. Your masa should be spreading really nice and softly onto your corn husk. And then again, you're just going to be turning it, spreading it out, and it should be nice and thin. Scoop the back and make sure you get it all the way down to the bottom. The edges are okay if you don't get it all the way out to the edge, but you definitely want to make sure you have it down towards the bottom, if anything. Okay, once you're done, that is your completed hoja. And then we usually set them down on the towels that we have laid out on our table. And then we keep spreading. Grab another corn husk, same process, dry it off, use your towel, pat it off, shake it off, whatever you need to do. Find the soft side by rubbing it on your towel. That's the rough side. So I know I'm going to put my masa on this side. If you get some that are like this, that have a little tear, just tear it off. You can keep these little pieces later when we're folding the tamales up. But I'll continue doing this and show you what it looks like. We are now ready to start filling our tamales. So we have a 32-quart pot, a steamer pot that has a steamer section at the bottom. We fill the water up to the line where this sits, so that way it's not submerged. It's underneath that. We have our pot of mole, the pork meat and mole. We also need to have like some sort of like one of these collapsible colanders, because we use this to kind of build the tamales around it, so when they steam, they're all kind of pointed in the same direction. If you don't have this, you can also roll up like a wad of tin foil and like stab it with a knife, so that way it kind of has holes in it to allow the steam to kind of go through it. So we just set this inside the pot. We also have large pitted olives, black olives. Not everybody likes olives, so it's optional if you want to use those or not. Before we start preparing and putting together the tamales, a tradition that my grandma always did was she'd bless the pot that we were going to be cooking with. So generally that consisted of the sign of the cross, kind of just doing a sign of the cross over the pot and just saying, to yourself or quietly, please Lord bless this pot and the food that's in it. And then I briefly talked about kind of the superstition we had when it came to filling the pot. So one person has to be the one to actually be putting the tamales together. Up to that point, it's kind of like a communal effort, as far as spreading the hojas and everything else, tasting stuff. But once it comes to this piece, it should just be one person who's putting the meat in the hoja, folding them, and then putting them in the pot. And then putting that pot on the stove, and they're the ones that check it etc. So we're going to go ahead and get started and put in our meat and our olive into our tamale. Usually we get a spoon, a serving spoon size, and we'll put about 2, sometimes 3 pieces of meat and a little bit of the mole in there to have it enough. You don't want to overfill it, because if you do, they kind of spill out everywhere. So we take about that much. We'll put an olive in the middle. And then what I do is I'll take one side, fold it over, other side, fold it over, so it's completely covered at the bottom. And then around the edge where the masa ends, that's where we'll kind of pinch it to kind of seal it. Fold that piece over, and then you've got your tamale. Then we'll get the pot and we'll stand them up in the pot like this, the top side facing forward, and then we're just going to place them in around the colander at the bottom of the pot. Kind of as a little balancing act at first until you get enough items in there, or tamales in there rather. I usually like to use the bigger hojas first, so that way you don't have to worry about piecing anything together. Use the smaller pieces later if needed. Again, pinch it, fold it, and then it goes in the pot. If you come across some that are like these that are kind of tasseled, these are good ones to keep for piecing together. So I'm going to put that one to the side for now until I need it. All right, so after I've finished all of the filling of the tamales, this is generally how they should look. So top should be up, the bottom's kind of filled in, and then you just keep going around the pot until they're all done. And then once this is done, you put them on the stove to boil. The way to tell if they are done, once you start boiling them, kind of keep it on a constant boil. Low heat once it boils, and then takes usually about an hour or so, and then we'll check them to see if they're done, and I'll show you how to do that. Something that I wanted to point out when it came to the pot boiling is that once it starts to boil, you're going to turn it down to medium low heat so it continues that boil, like that low boil. You can hear the boil in the pot. You have to keep an eye on the water level in the pot. You may have to add some before it's done, but every now and then you want to come over and listen to the pot and see if you can still hear the water in there. If it sounds like it's evaporated too fast, you can just take the lid off, pour some water, hot water, into like along the edge of the pot so it goes down to the bottom, and then you keep boiling. All right, so about an hour and 30 minutes have gone by. I did have to add about 4-6 cups of water to it while it was boiling. So the way that we check to see if the tamales are done is we're going to pull one out of the pot. Doesn't matter what, we can just pull one out, and look at them and see if they're starting to pull away from the leaf. Then once we do that, we can open it up to see if it's sticking to the thing. The other thing we can look for is if you notice the masa on the inside is kind of pulling away from the leaf. That's another sign that it's cooked. Like this one here, it's pulling away from the actual corn husk. So you can pull one out. So once you pull the tamale out, they're going to be hot, so you can usually use some tongs. You can start to peel off the hoja, and if it starts coming off just like this, that means it's cooked. It might stick to the top because of the moisture from when they're steamed. It might still kind of be stuck to the top, but the rest of it should come off pretty easy like this. Then we'll usually get a baking sheet, and we'll take them out of the pot and put them on a baking sheet to cool. So we'll just lay them out like this so they can cool down, and then we can bag them up and get them out.